Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Future of Golf podcast. Today, we have another fantastic guest. I'm joined in Texas by Ryan Engle, who's the founder of Golf Plus, which is fair to say, one of the industry leaders in the golf VR space. You said you're based in Austin, and we talked a little bit before about sort of the migration of really talented people in technology, sort of you said San Francisco still doing pretty well, but there is a bit of a migration in Austin. Were you guys always based in Austin, or was that a move that you made yourself?
Yeah, I've been based here since 2008. So I've been here, before it was cool, when it was still weird. Austin's
Yeah.
motto was "Keep Austin Weird." Um, but I would say, in our office in Austin now, we have about 7 people, and more than half of them have moved to Austin within the last few years.
Mm.
So we're definitely seeing a lot of new people come in, and especially on the tech side of things, which
Mm.
which is great for anyone who has a business in Austin, because it definitely makes it easier to recruit, and it's easier to get somebody to want to move to Austin because it's building up that reputation.
Yeah. And you mentioned being sort of weird or niche. I guess the niche of VR, if we sort of rewind like 10 years ago, like forget about VR golf, like VR in general as a concept was very out there. Like maybe the nearest thing at that time and sort of the mainstream was maybe like Nintendo Wii, where you sort of felt interactive, but it wasn't really like there's no headset. Um, but obviously you're combining the love of sport and then bringing this virtual reality element. So like that, whenever you started, must have been like your friends must have been like, "What? Like this is crazy what he's working on." Was it? Did it feel quite like niche at the time, or did you always see like VR was the future? You knew it was sort of going to be big.
Yeah, it's a good question. So when I started the business, we actually I started as an AR app, an augmented reality app, where you could use your phone to it would map the contours of a green and show the line from the ball to the hole. And I thought AR was going to catch on faster than VR, primarily because Apple added AR support to all of their phones, and they're like a billion iPhones out there, so suddenly a huge number of people have access to this technology, whereas VR requires you to buy, a VR headset. And I started the company in 2017. In 2017, in order to do VR, you not only had to have a headset, but you also had to have a pretty powerful computer to run the headset, right? The Quest hadn't launched yet, and everything required a computer to power it, along with, kind of these wall mounts that would track the controllers, and you had to have a pretty big dedicated space to it. So there was a lot of friction just getting into VR. I still bought all the headsets. When they came out in 2016, the Vive comes out, bought that headset, bought the Rift headset, got the computer and got everything set up because I thought VR has a ton of potential, but from a business and from a marketing perspective, it was pretty clear to me that VR there were just going to need to be some changes before VR caught on. Like, it was just such a difficult experience to get into. So did AR for a while, and then when the Oculus Quest came out, and there were no wires and there's no computer, and it's this $400 piece of hardware that you can put on your head and show to a friend and put on their head and works anywhere. That's when that's when we pivoted into VR, and I remember thinking to myself, like, this is what the market is asking for. This is pretty low friction. This might have a shot.
Hmm. It's a really interesting place where you started because, like, even like the overlay of the green, I'm thinking I'm a caddy myself. I think, that would be a hell of an application if I'm bringing around a player. It might make me a little bit lazy that I don't actually have to read the greens myself. I can just hold up the phone. So, yes, that's a really interesting place to start. Um, so you obviously had a bit of a passion for the VR. You said you were buying the headsets pretty early on. Was golf always a passion of yours as well? Did you always play growing up?
Yeah, I started playing golf when I was 11 years old. And my dad, I used to live in South Africa. So there wasn't, we lived pretty far away from like the school and my friends. And, unlike the United States, you couldn't just walk out your house and like walk over to a friend's house. Like it was in the mid 90s, and it was like, pretty dangerous. But all that being said, one afternoon, my dad went to go play golf with a friend at a golf course that was right behind our house. And it was a beautiful day out, and I think I was pretty bored. And, I had some junior clubs that he had bought me a while ago that I hadn't gotten a lot of use out of. But for whatever reason, I just asked him if I could join him and go play golf. And he said, "Yep, you can, but if I tell you to pick up the ball, you got to pick up the ball, and you got to keep up, and just like, be quiet during the backswing type of a thing. Just like, don't get in the way and don't slow us down, and you can come play." And I played, and I had the time of my life, and couldn't hit the ball very far, but because of that, I could almost always find it. So I was able to, get. I played all 9 holes and didn't have to pick up the ball once, even though I probably scored, double digits on every hole. And I just fell in love with it. I thought it was the greatest thing. I loved it. I probably hit a couple shots where, I maybe connected and hit it like 60 yards and was like, this is phenomenal. And ever since then, my dad and I played every weekend, and played in high school, and then, played a little bit after high school, and then really got back into it, during, I'd say over the last like 5 or 6 years. Just would go out casually and kind of play casually, but have maintained like about a 5 handicap. So not competitive whatsoever, but good enough to hold my own.
Yeah. Similar-ish level to me. I've sort of hovered around that handicap as well. But yeah, going back to like the earlier days, like it's such a nice feeling when you have no expectation going out, and there's those first few rounds. Like I had a very similar experience. I grew up basically playing a 9 hole course. I live in the coast of Ireland, so but yeah, so it was like you hit the ball 50 yards. We had really long, rough, like proper, like links rough at our course. So you always end up taking a sandwich and digging it out, and you get fed up, and you eventually lift it out, put it in the fairway. But it's when you have no expectations for how you're going to play, that's when you really fall in love with the game. I actually caddied for a very famous South African this year by the name of Mr. Player.
Did you really? No
Yeah,
kidding. That's
yeah,
amazing.
crazy. So I got a text one night, and from the caddy master. So I work at a course called Kingsbarns, or I did over summer. Text comes in. Do you want a caddy for Gary Player tomorrow at 10 to 10? I was like, yes, sir. But yeah, like I think he was 87 when I caddied for him, and he shot 3 under around our
Three
course.
under proper. Wow, that
Like
is phenomenal.
proper, like proper. And I can't take any credit for the score. Like I did not give him one bit of advice. I was just complete backseat. But it was just a masterclass, and like I think I've said this in another podcast, but he took the time for like you would have people walking around the golf course because there's a bit of a coastal route that comes through the course, so you would get like people just doing their Saturday morning walk coming through, and he would take the time to take 5 or 10 minutes and talk to them, and his character was just amazing for someone of that age. So there you go. So yeah, so growing up in South Africa, then at what point did you go across to the States then? At what age?
Yeah, we moved around a lot. So I had lived in the States, and we moved to South Africa. And then I ended up moving back for high school. So I would have been about 13 when I moved back to the States. And I've been in the States ever since, but moved back to Virginia and went to high school there. I went to college at Virginia Tech. And outside of golf, my other passion was computers,
Mm,
and computer games mostly, but then eventually computer programming, because I figured I could learn how to make my own games if I knew how to program.
mm,
And got into computer science, and thankfully my high school was one of the only high schools in the area that had computer science classes, so I got into that very early and just fell in
mm,
love with it. Um, and that when I first started playing golf, I thought I started to beat my dad pretty quickly, even though he had been playing
Yeah.
for a while. So I thought I was really good at golf, but it turns out my dad just wasn't really good at golf. And I thought I was going to be a pro golfer when I'm like 12 because I was getting better so fast. And then, yeah, by the time I was, 14, I figured I'd probably be a software engineer. It seemed like a
Yeah.
safer career path.
Yeah.
I was a lot better at engineering than golf.
It's always a reality check, like because my dad was a very casual golfer. When you beat your dad, you think you're invincible, really. And yeah, my dad played off like 36, so I
Yeah.
realized pretty quickly. I was like, huh, there's something not quite right. Um, I'm really interested, Ryan. Like, obviously, we'll get into the details of what's happened recently as far as like the PGA Tour partnership. Obviously, some really notable investors. So, the likes of I believe Rory, Jordan
Yep,
Spieth as well.
that's right.
That's awesome. So we will get into that. But I would love to learn a little bit more just about like the early years of Golf Plus. So you mentioned there you were sort of trying this AR thing. You weren't quite finding product market fit. You were sort of testing it. Um, what sort of learnings did you have in those first few years, or like what maybe were some of the struggles of getting started? Sort of when you were trying to find like where everything fitted in.
Yeah, it's like a broken record, but there's a reason for it. I think in the first version, it's all about finding product market fit, right? And for anyone who doesn't know what that means, basically developing a product that people actually want to use. So I had built this app called Golf Scope, and it did this AR green reading, and it worked. It actually worked. It's pretty mind blowing. It could actually show you the line from the ball to the hole in AR, and the design was good, and Apple featured it, and it even got App of the Day at one point. So got a ton of help from Apple marketing it. It actually worked, and it was riding this like AR wave, which was pretty hot at the time. And even with all of those things working in favor, it was just too hard to get people to use it. It was one of those things that if you're playing a round of golf, taking out your phone to kind of read a break before you hit a putt is
Mm.
not really socially acceptable. It's also against the rules of golf, so that's a bit of a headwind. And we had some ideas for how we could make it better and incorporate training and be more than just reading the putt, but also help you become a better putter. But ultimately, it was just pretty clear that it was going to continue to be an uphill battle
Mm.
because you can make your product better, but you probably can't change user behavior or user perception very easily. And At that point, it became clear that we really needed to try something different. Thankfully, I had a very small team, and the team was excited to kind of try new things. And that's why when the Quest came out, we decided to just go all in and see if we could build something great for the Quest. Thankfully, at the time, there really weren't any great golf experiences, so there was a pretty open opportunity there. And I had been a believer pretty early on that it would take time, but eventually VR would be a really big deal. And like, I still believe that VR is going to be the next major consumer hardware that has a massive impact on the world, similar to like smartphones to maybe 10, 15 years ago. So, with that in mind, there was this kind of window of opportunity to take this technology that had already been built to get the putting physics right and get it running in VR and just see how does it feel to hit a putt in VR. Wasn't even thinking about full swing at the time because at I actually had tried another VR golf game,
Mhm.
um, like in 2016 or 17 after I got the headset because I was like, oh, I wonder what VR golf feels like.
Yeah.
I remember trying it and swinging and hitting the ball and being like, this is terrible. Like VR golf's never going to work, so don't even think about that
Yeah.
anymore. And
Yeah.
I just put it down and like, frankly, hadn't thought much about it for a couple of years. But I wondered, well, maybe full swing's bad, but maybe putting could be good.
Mm.
So ended up getting the putting to work and, hit some putts and was like, actually, this feels pretty good. Like the speed is right. The roll feels good. You get a lip out and it makes you feel the same way as when you get a lip out in real life, or you make a putt and it makes you feel the same way as when you make a putt in real life. So, I thought it felt pretty good, showed it to my teammates and they thought it felt pretty good, and then started to show it to pretty much anybody that would give me the time of day,
Mm.
any golfer in particular. And everybody kind of had the same reaction, like, oh my God, like this is amazing. This seems like such a great training aid, or, what are you going to do with it? And that was the moment where it's like, okay, well, it's not exactly product market fit, but I've got people asking me, can I try that again?
Yeah.
Versus me trying to kind of, force them or encourage them to do it again. I had, you finally, product market fit is all about the consumer wanting more from the product,
Yeah.
versus sort of feeling like you have to do a lot of work to encourage them to give it another go.
It's so interesting because even though you had all those supporting mechanisms with the AR, so you had Apple promoting it, you got featured in the App Store, it was the VR that seemed to catch on. People seemed to find it more real. And obviously, putting, you would think like sort of, tracking putting and making that VR experience would be easier than the full swing, but I'm sure it's still not easy. So like, I guess you were in the right position because you had that tech background and you were sort of in that space. So you were probably a couple of steps ahead from anyone else who wanted to compete. But I'm sure it wasn't you alone that started working on that. Like, did you find someone else or like a co-founder at that point who was also interested to help you out?
Actually, from the very beginning, it was me alone as the founder. But when we moved into VR, I did find a co-founder. He had, I actually met him on a golf course, and he had seen the AR app, and I was talking about it and showing it to him. And he's been a golfer since since he could walk. Been playing his whole life. And we just bonded kind of over the experience. And he's not an engineer, but he's great with community building and, customer support and getting feedback from players, and sort of helping to do a lot of the soft skills that are required to get a product into production state versus just like a prototype. So he and I partnered up, and since then, he has been sort of the co-founder once we moved into VR. But from an engineering perspective, it was basically me, and then we did have a designer on the team, and we just ran pretty lean at first, and just tried to get it in the hands of as many people as possible. When the Quest had launched, there weren't that many VR games out there. It was still, even now, there aren't that many. But back then, it was very few. So, you could post something on Reddit and say, "Hey, we're working on this VR golf game.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, does anybody want to try it?" And you'd get a lot of people who are like, of course I want to try a new VR thing. Like, so we, so we were able to get hundreds of people using it on a pretty regular basis, even before the game went live, which gave us so much more confidence that, like, oh, maybe, what we're building has some potential, because we're getting some positive feedback. We have people that are like playing it on a daily basis without us asking them to. They
Yeah.
actually want to play it. So, in that respect, I would say for us, the community, building a community very early, even before we launched the experience, and getting feedback from them on a regular basis. We ran through it over a period of probably 9 months. I think we went through 7 different betas of the game, where
Mm-hmm.
we would, release one, get feedback, try to make improvements based on that feedback, release the next one, get more feedback, release the next one. And you'd get a couple people who tried the first one and they'd be like, this is trash, like this game sucks, it's
Yeah.
glitchy, like this is terrible, it's never going to work. And then they'd skip the second one, skip the third one, come back for like the fourth or fifth one and play it again and be like, oh my God, you did like everything that I had asked you for, like this is amazing, now I'm like your number one fan because like I feel like I had an impact on the product, which they did.
Yeah.
So we found that just kind of, really leveraging the community to ensure that what we're building isn't just working for us, but it's working for as many people as possible. Gave us the confidence that we needed to kind of move pretty quickly and try some things that didn't always work because we knew that our community kind of had our back and they would like let us know when we stepped out of line and keep us keep us on track.
Mm-hmm. So I guess at the start you're very much zooming in that niche that was using the Oculus, that were sort of in these like techie Reddit subgroups, and you were just putting in saying, can anyone really try this out? And then as you talked about, it was just that iterative process to take it from the first version where people were saying, it's a little bit glitchy, right up to people coming back and being amazed by it. And were these guys like, when you got to the seventh version, was it the original group that was still using it, or was it more, people a little, I don't want to say mainstream, but people that were maybe less familiar with you at the start? Was there sort of a larger group emerging at that point?
Yeah, so part of how we did the betas, which was all done by my co-founder Rob, he managed the whole process. Was we wanted to make sure that we always had a group of people that had been using it, so that we could get their feedback to understand if it got better or worse, right?
Yeah.
And then we would always add a new group of people to every beta, so that we got a first impression, because you can only have one first impression. So we wanted to make sure that we were making the first time user experience as seamless as possible, while also not making the experience worse for people who already liked the prior version. And because of that, our pool, basically would grow every time we did a beta. We'd have a kind of a bigger and bigger group of people. And then, even during the beta process, you would have people, we use Discord for communication. So people
Yeah.
could chat with each other, the beta users could chat with each other. And even by the end of the beta, since we went through these 7 betas, be like, oh, you're a beta 6 user. I've been here since beta 1. Like, I know what's going on. And you'd already have like a little bit of a like, I'm an OG,
Yeah,
even though
like
you haven't launched the
some sort of
product yet.
hierarchy, like people
Yeah,
just like thinking they're
exactly.
better. I've been here like 3 more days than you. How
Yeah,
dare you?
totally. That exactly. And you definitely had players who would want to be at the top of the leaderboards even during the beta, where it's like, you get competition and you get all the things that you kind of hope for. And that's when we started to get pretty excited that we had something pretty interesting, because even during the beta process, we saw people were using it.
Mm. And I think, yeah, so you would almost see like golf VR is starting to break through into the mainstream now. And I think your collaboration with the PGA Tour is certainly going to aid that transition of people. People associate golf with this physical activity of, I go to the driving range, there might be a Top Golf where you'll see some virtual thing appear on the screen, but I think people now, and people will in the future, associate golf with a virtual and a physical experience, and the virtual will very much complement that physical experience. But maybe for people that have sort of logged onto this podcast and they're not altogether caught up with the VR scene, if you could sort of like fundamentally describe what Golf Plus is doing, like how would you describe it in terms of like what features there is in the game, maybe what courses you could play. I think that probably is an important thing for users. They might want to play courses that maybe they're familiar with. So if you could sort of
Yeah,
like sum it up.
for sure. So yeah, I mean, for anyone who hasn't tried VR, it is very difficult to explain VR to someone who hasn't tried it, because I like to say it's kind of like trying to sell a TV on the radio. Like, I can tell you about it,
Yeah.
but until you see it, it's hard to explain. But you put on this headset, so it's on your face. It's covering your eyes. Everything that you see in the headset is full 3D. Wherever you look, you see content. You can walk around, you can move your head around, you can duck down, and it feels like you're somewhere else, right? And in our case, it feels like you're on a golf course. So right away, we have a golf club in your hand, and we have a partnership with Top Golf and Callaway, and we also have TaylorMade clubs in the game. We'll be adding more clubs this year, but you're holding a real golf club, uh, and you can look at it, you can see the reflections, you can swing it. So you swing it in full 3D. However you're holding it in real life, however you're holding the controller, the golf club is attached to that. So if you go in to out and club face is closed, you're going to hit a draw. If you go out to in, club face is open, you're going to hit a fade or a slice or whatever. And it's just an immediate one-to-one interaction where you're standing on a golf course with a club. And in terms of courses that we have the first course that we've got a few kind of what we call fantasy courses that we just built from scratch that are not real courses that we just wanted to give to our players for free. And then we've licensed courses, some famous courses around the world. The first one that we did was Wolf Creek Golf Course, which is
Yeah.
just north of Las Vegas, been in a lot of the Tiger Woods games.
Yeah, that's where I remember it, because I remember this like extreme course where you're sort of like hitting over canyons, and I'd be like,
Yeah,
that'll be really fun to play in real life. So you've got that in the
we've
headset.
got that. We've got that in the game, and you're standing on some holes, and there's like a 50-foot elevation drop, and you see it and you feel it, and you stand on the edge of the tee box, and you feel like you're on the edge of a cliff. So that course has been phenomenal for VR, just because it is such a wild course. We have Valhalla Golf Course, which Rory has won at. They've had Ryder Cups there. They'll be playing the PGA Championship. I think it's either next year or the year after, but it's coming up it's coming up pretty quick. We also have Kiowa, which Rory has won at as well. Interestingly, we added
Yeah,
both of those courses before Rory invested.
I was just about to say, did he have any say in putting those courses in?
No, it was pure coincidence. I think it was just
That's
a
cool.
good sign. A
It's
good
meant to
sign.
be. Yeah.
Yeah, meant to be. And then we just added Pinehurst number two. So that was added recently, and then we also just added Pebble Beach,
Awesome.
which obviously has been very popular. And within the next few weeks, we'll be adding TPC Scottsdale,
Wow.
thanks to our partnership with the PGA Tour. And then after that, we'll be adding TPC Sawgrass.
Are you going to try and replicate the 16th at Scottsdale with a crowd atmosphere as well?
We are
Oh
absolutely. So
man.
Scottsdale and Sawgrass will have the stadiums, the
Wow.
stands and everything built out.
And so what about just in that specific scenario, the likes of Scottsdale? Like, can you replicate like the noise from the
Yeah.
crowd? You've got that as well.
So we've got
That's
that as well. So if you miss the green, you're going to get booed,
wow.
and
That-
if you get it close, you're going to get some powerful cheers.
That's incredible, because for someone, let's say like an Arizona native that has turned up to that tournament for maybe like the past 15 years, and maybe a bit of them has just thought, I wonder how I'd feel if I stood in that tee. Now they potentially could experience that. And that's wonderful. Like, that is so cool. Um, I could go down a bit of a nerdy path and ask you sort of like about all the biomechanics, as far as like, you know what, I will.
Sure.
Like, how was it to do with TrackMan then? Like your conversations with them, where like you worked out the biomechanics of like, this person's hand is here, therefore that means the path is into out. Like, how did you sort of figure all that out?
Yeah, part of it's just the nature of how VR controllers work, where it is already being tracked in 3D space. So we don't technically we don't need to know anything about what your body is doing. At the end of the day, all the golf ball cares about is what the club is doing, right? So we're able to measure the 3D position of the club at up to 72 times a second. We can measure the exact face angle. We can measure the exact path of the club. And as soon as you make contact with the golf ball, we look at the path of the club and we look at the face angle, and that determines where the ball is going to go, at what speed, with how much spin, and then the rest of it is up to kind of the physics equation of what does a golf ball do when it has this much speed and this much spin. Um, so yeah, it's that's like obviously a very simplified version. There's a lot that goes into trying to get that right.
Mhm.
But at face value, it's the same exact sort of physics as is in real life, and we're completely reliant on what the club face is doing at impact.
Mm. I think a lot about golf as well. Maybe especially playing in the UK. So have you ever been across to the UK to play
I
links?
have I visited. I actually haven't played golf there because I was younger. I
Yeah,
visited before I played.
yeah. But I'm sure you've maybe played one of the links courses in America. But whenever you strike an iron nicely on links turf, it just gives you that nice, that nice crisp feel. What about like the sort of feelings in the game? Is that part of it as well? Can you actually feel the strike of the ball as well? Obviously.
So the controllers do have haptics built in, kind of like if you have an iPhone and you have it on vibrate or whatever, or you hit a button and you get like a little haptic feedback. The controllers have that, which when you do hit a ball, we give you that haptic feedback. But it turns out the biggest indicator of a clean strike, or whatever you want to call it, is sound, right?
Mm.
Like if you're at a driving range and you just like close your eyes and there are 10 people in front of you and you have kind of all of them hit, you don't feel what they're feeling, but just based on the sound, you could probably say like that guy pured it and that guy topped it and that guy chunked it. Like you can it's the sound. You can't The sound doesn't lie, right? So we worked with a sound engineer to do our best at kind of capturing all those different sounds. And to be fair, in VR we have set it up so that you cannot, like, the contact will always be pure. Your face can be open, your path can be all over the place, so you can slice it, you can hook it, you can
Yeah.
hit it too high, you can hit it too low, you can, there's all kinds of trouble to get into, but you can't top it and you can't chunk it. And we're always going to assume that you hit the middle of the face, um, just because there's enough discrepancy in kind of the tracking of the controllers that it would be really frustrating if you actually had to hit the middle of the face because of
Yeah.
the discrepancies. So all that being said, when you do hit a good shot, we give you that nice sound that you just pured it, and
Yeah.
you see a divot, and then ultimately you see which way the ball went. So maybe you pured it, doesn't mean it's going towards the hole, but at least it sounds like you hit a good
Yeah.
shot.
That's awesome. I'm just imagining if it did record bad strikes, I'm just imagining like a Friday night before a medal, like an average golfer is hitting VR shanks, and
Yeah,
just his
exactly.
confidence is just like crumbling.
Exactly. But even with the perfect strikes, hitting the ball straight is not easy, even in VR. I mean, just having the face, having the control of the club face, we've really found a lot of players, their natural shot shape comes out without any work.
Mm.
Is like if you hit a draw in real life, like that's your tendency in VR. If you slice in real life, unfortunately, that's your tendency in VR. And we've had a decent number of players who say they finally fixed their slice in VR and it fixed their slice in real life. Because
Wow.
I think a lot of players just don't appreciate the relationship between path and face angle.
Mm.
And it's the same thing in VR. So if your tendency is to have a wide open face on your backswing and you just never get it closed in time,
Mm.
um, you're probably going to do the same thing in VR. And if you start to build up the habit of closing the club face, long before impact, so that it's square, um, that's going to translate over to real life too. And it is kind of breaking habits, but it's doing it in a much safer environment, and allowing you to practice it 15 minutes a day before bed without having to travel to a golf course
Yeah.
and buy golf balls.
Mm. I think one thing about it as well is it's the accessibility of the VR experience now. being in the headset. Like if someone wanted to experience like hitting balls and not having to go to a course and still seeing the track of it, you'd have to use a TrackMan or something similar to that. You might go to a Top Golf, but TrackMans aren't cheap. You're going to be
Yeah.
paying a lot for balls, whereas it's obviously a game within Oculus, so it's going to be relatively affordable, I'd imagine, once you actually get the headset. Yeah, talk to me a little bit about the PGA Tour partnership. So you obviously mentioned there you're building out a lot of courses that are played in the PGA Tour. Is there any sort of other plans that you can reveal at this point that is sort of in the
I can't say too much because we're still working very closely with them on exactly what it ends up being. But I will say that our goal is to really help fans understand what it's like to be in the shoes of a pro golfer standing on the tee box of hole 16, having to hit this shot to potentially, win the tournament or keep yourself in contention. And we want you to feel what it's like to be playing with the pros or against the pros, same conditions, playing on 13 stimp greens, playing in windy conditions, firm and fast, right? Like, what is that actually like? And most people who watch these golf tournaments unfortunately aren't going to have the opportunity to play a lot of the courses in real life. Some of them are private, a lot of them are across the world, and even if you can get to them, very expensive or hard to get onto. So we think it's really cool for someone to be able to play the exact same course that they're seeing on TV and get a better appreciation of what the contours are actually like, what that putt was actually like, how deep that bunker actually is, so that they even have a better viewing experience. So that when they're watching the pro, they're like, "Oh, I was in that bunker when I was playing earlier today, and like that's going to be really tough up and down." Or, oh, I remember that putt. It breaks harder left than you expect. I bet he misses it low. And I think just putting fans kind of a closer to connection to what the pros are going through
Mhm.
will help people appreciate how good these pros are.
Yeah. And obviously, we mentioned you've got a very tangible link to them because you've got Tour Pros as investors as well. So I'd imagine the likes of, Jordan Spieth and Rory McIlroy, like how helpful have they been? Maybe not only to fund it, but also like building out your product, especially working with the PGA Tour because you're trying to build that Tour Pro experience. Like there, you have guys that have obviously at the highest level experienced those pressures. Like how helpful have they been?
Yeah, they've been incredibly helpful, by far, far more helpful than we even could have imagined. Rory's team has introduced us to almost everybody in the golf space that you can imagine, and obviously everybody loves Rory, and he walks the talk, and he always delivers. So that has just helped us get a lot of the golf courses that we've talked to and get a lot of these deals done, but also having the opportunity to demo to him and kind of show him the experience and show him some of the new things that we're working on and get his real-time feedback has been great. And they're pretty busy people. So obviously we love as much feedback as we can get, but also fully appreciate that their number one priority is winning golf tournaments, and they travel a lot. So we try to spend as much time as possible, but it's never enough, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that must be really interesting watching them experience that and just watch your product being used by someone like that as well. Like thinking back to those early days, you must have been like, this is a bit crazy that I've got it in the hands of like these top golfers. Like surely there was a moment where you're just like, yeah, you're pinching yourself almost. But I'm sure there's been an adaptation to normality, like as you've went on. Like it probably seems all quite normal to you now, does it?
That's a good question. You're yeah, I mean, the first time meeting Rory, like 100%, like this is crazy. Like this is the best golfer in the world, and he's, he's investing in our business, and now he's using the product, and I'm able to talk to him. It is crazy. It's like, you watch these guys on TV, and then they're standing right in front of you. And what's been super cool is that there's the moment of nerves initially, but they've just all been so approachable and so genuinely interested in what we're doing and how they can help, and answering any questions that we have for them about how the product could get better, or how it could adapt to what they know. So it just very quickly kind of goes from a bit of being starstruck to like getting into it and started and really sharing just a very strong passion for golf. Ultimately, that's what we talk about, and what can we do to make golf more accessible to as many people as possible. And every single golfer, you know basically every single golfer wants that. So we have a shared mission right from the get-go, and by focusing on that versus getting too caught up in like, this person is the celebrity, all of that, it's kept it it's kept it a lot more manageable. And ultimately, my goal is to make the most out of every second that we have with our investors, because they're very, very busy people. So every time you do it, you get a little bit better at it, but there's always like, the some nerves that come with kind of the initial
Of course.
conversation.
Yeah, I suppose your mission in general as a company is to really break down the barriers that exist between, I guess, amateur golfers. Like maybe they have a friend across the globe that they can't play golf with. Um, amateurs not understanding what the pros feel like. It is really bringing down those barriers, and it's almost like a meta that thing has brought you closer together with those guys who are at such elite levels of the game as well. So yeah, so I think we went into a ton of detail, Ryan, there. But just to sort of wrap it up, what I guess, you've got the PGA Tour partnership this year. Is that like your main focus going into 2023, or have you got sort of other things balanced as well?
That Yeah, the PGA Tour partnership, we really want to make the most of that. Get it off to a good start and start to push the limits of what we can do together with them. And they're, they obviously host some of the most amazing tournaments that are played every year, and have been where the best competition in golf has existed for decades. So we have a lot to learn from them.
Mm.
And that's what we're focused on right now. But we also just have a lot of improvements that we want to make to the game outside of the PGA Tour experience. Golf Plus is still our core game, and the PGA Tour experience is now going to be part of that. But the core experience is really just playing golf in VR in general, and especially playing with other people, playing multiplayer with your friends, like you were just saying. So there are a ton of small and large improvements that we have on the roadmap. Some new game modes. A lot of our players are asking for that team scramble, so that's on the roadmap. And then just a lot of kind of like little wish list items of making the experience as seamless as possible. And then the last big piece that we'll be tackling over time is game improvement, right? A lot of real world golfers see the potential, and really want to learn more about how to become better golfers using Golf Plus and practicing at home every night, and just better, understanding what kind of drills that they can do to become better golfers, and tracking that. So we've got a lot on the roadmap, and we're definitely not planning on slowing down anytime soon. But in the coming months, we should have some pretty big announcements around that.
That's awesome. A lot on your plate, but no better man to take on a challenge like that. I guess a lot of usage, it seems like, has been sort of US focused. So maybe for like people in UK, Europe, South Africa, other continents, if they wanted to find out a little bit more about Golf Plus, or they're just a little bit curious, where would you recommend they go online to check you guys out?
Yeah, they can go to golf plus all spelled out plusvr.com. So golfplusvr.com is kind of where you find us. You can also just do a Google search for golf plus with the plus sign, and we should be the top result. Where US is our biggest market for sure, but that's more just because that's where the majority of headsets have been sold.
Yeah.
The UK is our second largest market. And we're hoping that VR just continues to grow outside of just the U.S. And golf is a worldwide sport. It's played in almost every country, and our hope is that we can kind of make it even more accessible outside of the states, since the states already has quite a few golf courses. But interestingly, one of our players lives in Chad, Africa,
Okay.
uh,
Yeah.
and there's not a single golf course in Chad.
Huh.
So we have now
That's
we have
interesting.
now converted a country that has no golfers into having
Wow.
one golfer. So stuff like that is really cool. We've seen data that shows we've had golfers from like over 100 people play in over 150 different countries. Still, the vast majority is in the US, but the fact that these headsets are getting out there and people are experiencing golf in places that don't even have golf courses is a pretty cool feeling, and something that we want to double down on.
Yeah, that is awesome. And I'm sure there's going to be many more breakthroughs like that in years to come as you bring out more products. Genuinely really excited for this because I've talked to so many people in this space, either building like metaverse golf games. I spoke to people in the driving range business building this tech, and there seems to be a lot of effort, a lot of investment put in this space. And this is certainly something that's going to drive that innovation. So I'm looking forward to tracking your progress. Looking forward to hopefully using the product. Don't currently own an Oculus at the minute, but I'd imagine as this adoption curve and price goes down, there'll be many more people like myself that are curious to use it. Ryan, absolute pleasure to have you on. And I'm sure we'll be hearing more from you this year. So good luck with everything. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks so much, Graham. Appreciate being here.